Good morning and welcome again to the March session of BusinessWise Insiders. In a moment, I'll start the presentation. It'll run for 20 to 25 minutes. And then after which, as Deb just mentioned, we'll open up the session to discussion. And you'll get a chance to introduce yourselves, ask questions, and share ideas about today's topic or anything else that might be on your mind this morning. If you can, I would strongly encourage you to stick around for that portion, since that personal interaction and knowledge sharing are really the spirit of BusinessWise Insiders. They have been all the way back to the days when we did it in person in each of our three markets, and we love to continue it. So it helps put the themes that we'll discuss today in a real world context, and it's a great way to share some practical ideas about how to put them into practice. To avoid any inadvertent disruptions, I'm just going to keep everyone on mute during the presentation. So if you have a question, either ask it in the chat window and we'll try to get to it during the presentation, or you can save it later for the breakout discussion. So let's turn to today's topic. We're going to look at how to develop a smart cold email strategy for 2024 with a specific focus on how to make your emails more personal in order to increase the odds of getting a reply from and starting a conversation with your best prospects. So two quick points here at the outset. First, I want to be clear what we mean when we talk about email in the context of B2B sales. We're talking about how sales reps can use email to create connections, start conversations, and generate opportunities with individual prospects. In other words, this is about email as a prospecting tool rather than as a marketing tool. And we're actually going to drill down into one very specific kind of email prospecting that lends itself especially well to personalization, but I'll get to that in a moment. And then secondly, and we'll talk about this as well, but keep in mind that a smart email strategy is about more than just email. We're not just trying to answer the question, how do I write an email that generates replies and leads, or even what broader email strategy will maximize replies and leads. The question we're trying to answer is, where does email fit in to a broader B2B prospecting strategy, and how can I leverage email to overcome the obstacles I face to connecting with my best prospects? So let's start by asking a broader question to set the stage for today's presentation. Why is email personalization important? Most sales reps will probably point to bonding and rapport, the idea that you can create a personal bond with your prospect, and if you do so, you're more likely to earn their trust and ensure open and honest communication. And those are certainly important reasons to inject personalization into your prospecting, particularly after you've entered into a conversation with your prospect. And in fact, the principle of likability and familiarity, which holds that prospects are more likely to buy from people that they like and are familiar with, is one of the 6 psychological persuasion tools highlighted by Dr. Robert Cialdini in his seminal book, Influenced the Psychology of Persuasion, which we touch on often here at BusinessWise Insiders. But when it comes to cold email, personalization is about much more than just highlighting common interests in an effort to come across as likable. Instead, think about personalization like this. Every email is a transaction. There's a cold email contract. This is especially true in cold emails where there is no prior relationship or additional context. If you want something from your prospect, a reply, you need to offer something in return, value to that prospect. And that creates a level playing field between two human professionals where you both stand to gain together. So you can see here on our slide, the owl on top is saying, if I make my prospect feel like I know them and understand their challenges and priorities, that gives a hint that there's value in this conversation and the prospect has a reason to reply, call, or click. So here's a few other ways to think about why personalization matters. And one general framework that I came across recently, it's from a sales consultant named Samantha McKenna, who runs a business called Sam Sales Consulting, and she's trademarked the phrase, show me that you know me. And it's a really succinct way of encapsulating why personalization is important and what you should be aiming for as you attempt to personalize your emails. And what I love is what the framing implies. If I'm your prospect, I want you to show me that you know me. In other words, I want to feel like you understand me, my work, and my goals and challenges. And here are 3 ways you can do just that. First, you can show me that you know what I'm up to, what my specific role is, what my strengths and interests are, and what I've been up to lately. Second, you can show me that you know what I'm trying to achieve by demonstrating an understanding of the company that I work with and the solutions and services I provide to my clients. And then finally, you can show me that you know the obstacles and challenges I face through your expertise in the industry I work with and your experience working with others in that industry to solve common problems and eliminate common obstacles. But let's back up for just a second. You'll remember when I said we'd be drilling down into a specific kind of email prospecting in today's session. And that's because there are many kinds of email prospecting, not all of which lend themselves to the kind of personalization I've been describing. Here at BusinessWise, we offer our clients 3 different ways to reach their prospects using email. The first way is through sort of a traditional email blast where you want to reach your entire audience simultaneously. That kind of email is great for getting word out about a time-sensitive offer like an event invitation or for a one-time infusion of leads, but it's not very personal and it can be difficult to maintain consistency since it requires ongoing work on your part to craft and schedule those emails. A second way is through what we call automated email prospecting, which automates a sequence of emails to your prospects gradually over time and creates a steady stream of leads into your inbox. And AEP is a really good tool for maintaining a consistent level of outreach to your prospects and a steady stream of opportunities to your inbox, but it isn't good for anything time-sensitive or particularly personal. So finally, our clients can send one-at-a-time emails to their prospects directly from the BeWise platform, just as if you were launching and writing an email from Gmail or Outlook. Of course, this is not ideal for reaching thousands of prospects quickly, but it is especially well suited to targeting high-value decision makers with highly personalized messages, which is exactly what we'll be talking about today. And of course, that raises the question of when email personalization is most effective. Conducting research into your individual prospects and their companies and inserting that information into your emails takes time and effort. So you have to use your judgment about when it's worth it. So here are 3 scenarios to think about that define when personalization is most effective. First and foremost, it's really only worth it when you're reaching out to your highest value prospects, the ones that are most likely to benefit from your product or service. And those are the prospects for whom the potential reward is worth the time and effort it takes to personalize. Second, and hopefully this is obvious, but personalization only works when the info you're using is accurate. So don't take what you find online at face value. Take care to frame it in the right way and verify wherever possible. And then finally, even the most thoughtfully crafted, expertly personalized emails don't always get a reply. As we'll explore later in the presentation, it's critical to combine your personalized emails with phone calls and email follow-ups, even with email blasts and automated campaigns to reinforce your message and maximize the odds of a reply. So we'll be getting into some specific email personalization tactics and principles, but before we do that, I just wanted to invite Deborah, our president, to offer any introductory thoughts on the topic.
The value that Sam's sharing today is great. I just want to remind everybody that none of this works without having the right lists. And while that's a topic we often visit, we're not going there today. I just want to remind everybody to review your current clients and find others with similar firmographic and psychographic characteristics and go back and review your lists. And I say that in plural because the list for your dream clients applies to this personalization, while the other broader lists will be used in the other ways that Sam mentioned today.
Thanks, Deb. So let's start with the very first obstacle that you'll be trying to overcome when you're sending a one-at-a-time email, and that's how to break through your prospect's inbox so that they can actually see, open, and read your message. I'm guessing this won't come as a surprise to most of you, but we're facing sort of an inbox clutter crisis. Everybody's inbox is really cluttered these days, and one of the big reasons why is that the sales industry has tried to solve the effort reward problem of B2B sales by flooding the zone with cold emails. You get them, I get them, everyone gets them. And yet so many sales reps approach email like our 2 owls here and make one of 2 critical mistakes. Either they're imagining their prospects sitting at their computer with nothing to do and then devoting their full attention to any email they receive. So it stands to reason that if we just write a great message with a great subject line about our great product and service, our prospect will enthusiastically reply. Or they write extremely short, generic, and borderline gimmicky emails and subject lines like quick question or thoughts in an effort to bait their prospects into opening their email and replying. But the reality is that both strategies are misguided because neither one demonstrates any level of personal knowledge of your prospect's circumstances, goals, or challenges. One is focused on what you do, and the other one isn't really focused on anything relevant at all. From your prospect's perspective, there's nothing in either of these types of subject lines that hints at any value they receive from opening or reading the email. So when it comes to subject lines, and I just wanted to touch on it briefly because you can make them personal and it can be effective, there's one really key principle, and that's don't overthink it. The most successful subject lines are the ones that look like they're coming from regular humans with a genuine question, concern, or request based on that prospect's individual circumstances. That's really what personalization is and where it starts. So the best subject lines are crisp and clear. You don't want to make your prospect work to try to understand what you're writing about. So keep it short and easy to understand. They're relevant. You want to give your prospect a reason to open by including relevant personal information that hints at the value they might get from opening and reading. And then finally, and I'm being a little bit glib here, but they're boring. Marketers are the ones who use flashy, creative subject lines where the first letter of every word is capitalized. But regular people who are trying to reach out to other regular people just use regular subject lines. And in this day and age, those types of short, to the point, value-based subject lines are the ones that stand out in the inbox more than anything else. So here are a few ideas just at the outset for how you can personalize a subject line in various ways and to varying degrees, while still following the guidelines on the previous slide to keep it crisp and clear, relevant, and somewhat boring. So one way to do it is to mention your prospect's name, a pretty straightforward thing, but when you have contact information and personal information for each of the contacts in your list, it's an easy thing to sort of pre-populate. Same thing for your prospect's company. And you can see with each of those examples, I'm not just mentioning the name, I'm also hinting what the content of the email is with a short 3 or 4 word phrase. And we'll get into this in a moment, but you can reference things that you find online about your prospect, reference a post they made on social media, reference a company announcement about the company they work for. Another great strategy would be to reference a shared connection. Somebody suggested that I reach out to you. And then finally, this is a little bit less personal, but it really gets to the heart of what we're trying to accomplish in a cold email. You want to mention a common problem that you know about that you can help solve. So here we're not mentioning the company or the prospect, but we are saying not enough Charlotte leads and hinting that this is a problem that this company that we're reaching out to is likely to have. And if I'm being analytical, I would say that these subject lines all have strengths and weaknesses, but when it comes to subject lines, the only thing that matters is whether it works. So I would encourage you to experiment with different approaches and see which ones deliver you the most opens and replies. But hopefully these ideas can help you get started. Deb, did you have anything to add on subject lines?
Probably the only thing that I would add is to have realistic expectations that success still comes from small numbers. And you have to know that and believe it and work with the reality of today.
Right. So just because you personalize a subject line in the right way doesn't necessarily mean they'll open it, doesn't necessarily mean the prospect will read or reply. But we're looking for, volume at the end of the day, and consistency, sticking to best practices will generate the stream of leads that you need to start conversations and move the process forward. Okay, so of course the subject line is just the very tip of the iceberg when it comes to cold email, but I thought it was a good place to start. But the real personalization happens within the email itself. So I'm going to walk through 3 key ways that you can personalize your emails, as well as a handful of mistakes that you should avoid. And the first key way you can personalize is to focus on the person, the prospect you're reaching out to. In other words, personalization starts with the person, so you should try to find and leverage info about them their career path, and their recent professional activities. And by far the best place to look for info about your individual prospect is on LinkedIn. Typically, for an active LinkedIn user, you can find out who they are, where they went to school, their current role at their company, their relevant skills and professional interests. You can find out where they are in their career, their employment history, how long they've been with their current company, whether they've been promoted recently. And then you can find out what they've been up to lately, posts they've made about business topics, projects or initiatives they've been involved in, or articles that feature them or their work. And before I continue, I just want to acknowledge that this can seem like a lot of info. Obviously, you can go to a LinkedIn profile and see a ton about each individual prospect and the company they work for, especially people who have been in the industry for a long time and may have had many roles over the years. So I want to emphasize here that the point of personalization is not to throw someone's entire life story back at them in an email, but rather to find individual pieces of information that you can use to grab their attention and then start a conversation that delivers value for them. So what we're going to be talking about is really all the things that are out there and how to home in on one or two pieces and then use it to leverage personalization to start conversations. So the next level of personalization has to do with the company where your prospect currently works. And while this may be slightly less personal than your prospect's individual skills and interests, it really has everything to do with their current professional life and everything to do with your current professional life. After all, you're in B2B sales, which means you're looking to help your prospects' businesses solve a problem. So it's critical to locate and use information about their company as well. And you can do that obviously on LinkedIn, but I think even a more logical place to start would be on the company website. That's sort of their brochure for what they do and who they help, any news related to what they've been doing. So you can find a ton of info there for companies that stay active on their sites. And whether you're looking on the site or on LinkedIn, there's a trove of information you can find and deploy. Similar to what we just talked about, how do the businesses serve their clients? What problems do they solve? What products and services do they offer? How long have they been in business? Is this an old company that's trying to adapt to new circumstances, or is it a new company trying to find a niche? And then what's new with the company? Have they made any recent announcements or changes? Have their executives been featured in any way? All these are great pieces of information that you can use to tee up a conversation with your prospect. And then finally, you can include personalized information about your prospect's industry. So strictly speaking, this may be the least personal category of information, but the good news, it's stuff you already have in your head because you have experience and expertise in helping clients in that same industry, and that's what your prospects care about. So think about what you know about your prospect's industry that can help them gain a new perspective on their goals and challenges. Is there new technology emerging in your prospect's industry, and what stories can you tell about how you've helped navigate technological transitions in the past? Are there new barriers to success in the industry? What are you seeing with your current clients in that regard? And then where are the trends pointing, and what does that mean for your prospect's ability to achieve success in the future? So let's quickly pivot and just turn to some common mistakes and pitfalls you should avoid in your efforts to personalize your emails. Some of this is subjective, but based on sort of what we know about the emails we get and the things that pique our interest or turn us off, I think it's pretty safe to say that you want to avoid, or at least you want to be careful with information that's too personal or potentially irrelevant. So your prospects' hobbies or favorite sports teams might be a good way to grab their attention, but doesn't really have anything to do with their business goals. So you want to be careful about how you deploy those types of information. The second is, and again, I'm being a little bit glib, but you don't want to come across like a stalker. So digging deep into your prospect's personal Instagram feed for info about something that they might like or a hobby they might have has the potential to come across as creepy. And then finally, don't be unprofessional. And this is really the thing to underscore here. The bottom line is that your email is about business, so try to keep it about business. And then just to close out this section, I want to reiterate that the point of personalization, again, is not to precisely catalog everything you can find out about a prospect, their company, and their industry, and then throw their entire life story back at them in an email. Your goal is to find those nuggets of info that you can use to start a conversation that provides value to your prospect. So as you do your research, be constantly asking yourself, what is interesting? what is piquing my interest about my prospects' career path, skills, and activities? Is there any overlap with my own that I can use to segue into a way that I can help them or provide value? Similarly, what's different, what's unique, what's special about your prospect's career path, skills, and activities? What would your prospect be most proud of about their career? Thinking about that can be a really great way to key in on something that will grab their attention. And then finally, similar to what I just mentioned on the previous slide, what's relevant? Your prospects want business help, not a new best friend. So stick to what's relevant to their and your professional lives as a way of starting that conversation to help them achieve business goals. Deborah, any thoughts here from you?
Just remember that your list of dream clients is probably somewhere between 20 or 60 companies. So when your results may be someplace between 2 and 10%, maybe a little higher, the number of responses are really small. So you want to be doing this more time intensive and wonderful personalization along with other forms of email, or else you're going to be in trouble.
Thanks, and that's actually exactly what I'm about to talk about. So I wanted to quickly touch on an aspect of personalization that sometimes gets overlooked, which Deborah just mentioned, and that's the importance of following up when you don't get a reply. I mentioned earlier in the presentation that even the most thoughtfully crafted, expertly personalized emails don't always get a reply. So it's really critical to combine your personalized emails, not only with other types of email, and not only by following up with emails, but with cold calling and other forms of prospecting to reinforce your message and maximize the odds of your work paying off and generating a reply. Even outside the context of personalization, having a multi-channel, multi-touch strategy is just plain smart. Here's a stat, according to SalesLoft, that says response rates are 77% lower for prospect cadences that use only email and 91% lower for prospecting cadences that use only cold calls when compared with multi-channel cadences. So if you're only sending one highly personalized email and then giving up when you don't get a reply, you're missing out on opportunities and you're wasting the valuable time and energy that you put into crafting that email in the first place. But similarly, it's not enough to send a personalized email and then have a vague plan for follow-up at some later date. With a personalized approach, you're committing a lot of time and effort to each of these high-value prospects. So it makes sense to develop and follow a strict cadence, a clear blueprint for how and when you will reach out to that list of top prospects. So what might a cadence look like? Well, it's a calendar with specific action steps based on how and whether your prospect responds that you can plan methodically and execute consistently. So maybe day one is to send that personalized email. And then if you don't reach your prospect, you leave a voicemail and follow up with another email. Day three might be another cold call, and then an email with a resource that you think they might find helpful, and that you follow up with another cold call. But whatever your plan is, the point is creating a clear blueprint reduces uncertainty and paralysis and guarantees consistency and repetition, which are two of the most critical ingredients to biz dev success over time. And a great way to bring even more focus to your list is to divide your top prospect list into groups and create a rotation where you communicate with one group every week. So a specific example I read about recently suggested, like Deb just mentioned, having a top list of maybe 60 dream clients. So you divide it into 4 groups of 15 and you rotate them on a 4-week rotation where each week you're focusing on that group of 15. And that can create focus, patience, and consistency. And when combined with personalization can be particularly effective. Of course, you can also combine email and cold calling in more direct ways to maximize the effectiveness of your personalization strategy. And one approach we like to use is to follow up a voicemail with a personalized email. So essentially, the heart of the strategy is the personalized email, but you're setting it up with a voicemail before that you can use as a hook for that email. It ensures you have a plan for when you can't get through to your prospect, and it warms up both channels by anchoring them to each other. So on the screen here is just one example of a short and sweet voice message that you can leave. followed by an email that references that and a specific piece of personal information. And again, while this is just one tactic, it can and should be part of a broader planned out cadence that combines multiple emails, cold calls, voicemails, and other prospect touches. Again, the goal is to combine various channels, email and otherwise, that you have at your disposal to maximize the odd that your message will grab your prospect's attention and start a conversation that provides value to them. Okay, so we've covered a ton of info so far in the presentation. So I wanted to end the session by providing a few examples of how these ideas and strategies might look in the real world. We'll look at a few ideas for personalized emails that sales reps can send to start conversations with prospects. And of course, you should feel free to steal and try any of these in your own cold outreach efforts. So in our first example, presenting an email that is referencing an announcement that the prospect's company is hiring new sales development representatives. And as you can see, you don't have to include a ton of detail about the announcement. Simply referencing it shows that you've put in the work to understand the company's current goals and strategies. And then you can immediately pivot into a challenge or complication that the prospect might not be thinking about, but that you can help with. So in this case, the company is hiring SDRs. We reference that announcement and mention that it's a great sign that the business has new business development on its radar and are devoting resources to it. But we're mentioning the complication that when you expand your team, you're investing more resources into your biz dev strategy. And so it's especially important to think about making sure you're generating ROI. So it's an approach that shows thoughtfulness, attentiveness, insight, and relevance to a problem that you can help solve. And in a few short paragraphs, you've turned a valuable nugget of personal prospect-specific information into a call to action for a conversation. So for our second example, I have an email that references a social post by the prospect. And the formula is pretty similar here. You quickly tell your prospect that you saw their post and why you liked it, and then pivot to why it relates to what you do for your clients. And then you can close with an interest-based call to action to start a conversation that provides value to your prospect. And you can see, while the formula is similar, there are some different tactics I used here. So mentioning what you liked about the post, what it gets you thinking about in terms of what you do for your clients, and then asking a few questions that are related to that overarching topic leading into a call to action. So our third example uses a prospect's promotion in much the same way. Instead of focusing on company info or sort of a biz dev topical LinkedIn post, you're speaking directly to personal circumstances of your prospect and their career path. But you start with the personalization, transition to what that personalization might reveal about the challenges and priorities that are currently on your prospect's mind or should be. And then you pivot to ideas that might be helpful to your prospect in addressing those challenges and priorities. And then at the end, I've offered a slightly different, more direct call to action where you can simply ask what times work for the prospect, and suggesting you'll follow up with a calendar invitation. And the only reason I mention that is sometimes the way you phrase your call to action can in itself be a differentiator. If you don't sound like everybody else, you sound like an actual human being, and that can be a good way to resonate with your prospect and amplify the personalization that you've inserted into your email. So our fourth example is more focused on the industry problems and insights that you can help solve and provide. So here, we're not really including anything specific to the prospect or their company. There's nothing about their career path or an announcement that the company made, but it's full of stuff that you know about your prospect's industry and suggesting that you have insights about how to help solve these common problems. So you can see, even if it's not directly personal, there's a ton of stuff in here that comes across as personal. I've been interested in what you guys are doing over a company. Would you say that one of these two problems is a bigger issue for you guys? Which one is it? And then talking about, we offer a roadmap. Would you be open to a short conversation to hearing about the common failure points and the fixes that we've had success with? And again, this is stuff that you already have in your head. You have worked with clients in these industries for years. You've helped them solve problems, and mentioning those experiences and how you've helped those clients is a great way to bring a level of personalization to your cold emails. And then our final example, this was taken from a webinar that Jason Bay of Outbound Squad put on. He's a sales consultant, helps sales teams with cold calling and email tactics to boost replies and conversations. And this is a sort of pretty formulaic, but I think an approach worth considering for how you can roll use all the aspects of personalization to pivot to a call to action that can resonate. So in this example, there was information online that this company was integrating Microsoft Teams into their software offering. So in the subject line, you mentioned the Teams rollout at company. You start by asking the question, how are your customers adjusting to that new integration? And then mentioning why you're asking, because the support executives you talk to are sharing a focus on, insert problem and challenge. The third paragraph is sort of a case study social proof. Our client used our help to diagnose that very problem and to help address it. And then finally, a short and sweet call to action. Are you open to learning more about how this might help a company? So just sort of a bread and butter way of turning personalization at the top into a social proof near the bottom and a call to action that might lead to a conversation. So hopefully these are helpful. Again, feel free to steal them. We'll be sharing the presentation with all the registrants of the session. So don't feel like you have to write all this stuff down now. You'll be able to review the presentation at your leisure later. And I just wanted to close with one key point, which Deborah mentioned earlier, that the effectiveness of all of this really depends on having the contact information for these top prospects. The less you have to work to develop that list of top prospects and to find contact information for them, the more you can focus on researching those prospects and including personal information in your emails. So I would certainly not overlook that point. And of course, we'd be happy to talk to anybody who's looking for better contact information about how to build lists to make their email personalization most effective. But before we transition to the breakout discussion, Deb, did you have any closing thoughts?
It occurs to me for those users of BeWise that another couple time-saving tips include the link to Indeed. When you're on your list of prospects, Sam talked about a company that might be hiring somebody. So check out if the company you're interested in has job offerings on Indeed. Of course, the LinkedIn link is right there at your fingertips. And there are other links to larger companies to find out more information that will help you personalize in the way Sam was describing. So I'm real interested to hear some of your feedback from today and your ideas, stuff that's working or not working. And let's move on to the next part of the presentation.
Great. Thanks for attending, everybody, and hope you stick around.